All right, welcome everyone to our SSW Software Architecture White Robe Community Update for June 2023. So in these community updates, what our goal is to hear is just to kind of highlight all the work that the team's been doing sort of in the realm of software architecture guidance, and also the work on our clean architecture template that we've been doing as well. So our highlights for June, first up, we've got our clean architecture workshop we've been chipping away on, which is almost complete. We did some work around the domain events and just how they're sort of structured and published within the template. We have come up with a new process for how we kind of record our decisions. Also, the next one is our .NET CLI item template. So we've got a couple of templates that will help allow us to quickly create queries and commands. We've also released version 0.4.0 of our clean architecture template and put together a little bit of guidance around project personas and when you might like to choose one architecture over another. So our clean architecture workshop, the content for this is about 75% complete. So that's going to be presented by myself and by Luke towards the end of this month and the start of August as well. And if you'd like some more information on that, you can find out all the details on our website or just Google SSW events. Now, next thing we worked on was around the domain events in our solution. So previously, the domain events were fired from the application layer within our clean architecture template, and it was kind of decoupled a little bit from the actual data that we were changing in the domain. So what we've done is we've kind of moved these two things close together. We've put them together. So an example of that is the to-do item that we've got in our template. So for that, we're now using a factory pattern to statically, a static method for the factory pattern to create that to-do item, and that's going to create the data and publish the domain event at the same time. Now, the benefit of this is that we're guaranteed that the domain events are always going to be fired whenever we actually change this, the data or state in our domain. And another benefit of this is it actually allows us to easily unit test the stuff because our domain is free from our persistence layer. So decision recording process, we made a decision to start using architecture decision records to record important decisions within the project. So these ADRs, they're actually stored as markdown within our GitHub repository, and we're using a tool called Log4Brains to manage these. So what these things actually end up being published to. So we've got a static website which is being hosted via GitHub pages on our repo, and you can see the ADRs that we've created so far within our clean architecture template. So when you set up Log4Brains, it comes out of the box with a couple of different ADRs just so you get a bit of a feel of the tool and the sorts of information that you should be putting in these things. And we've got a couple of specific ADRs that we've added already as well. So we've got one here for EF core specifications in our commands and queries. So there was a decision that we wanted to make here around how we structure these things, if we wanted to use specifications, if we wanted to use repositories, how we wanted to do that. So what we did was we basically outlined a bunch of options, kind of weighed up all the pros and cons of those options. And then in the end, we made a decision on which one of these options to go with. And a flow-on effect of this as well is there are several sort of consequences that sometimes follow on from a specific decision. So we've kind of noted those down as well. You'll also see here as well, so I mentioned before that we made a switch to using the factory pattern to create our aggregates or our entities. So we created an ADR for that as well. And you can see all the different options that we weighed up, the pros and cons, and then the option that we actually went with. So I've also created a rule on this on SSW rules. I've got some more few points here on the advantages of using ADRs and also how you can kind of get set up with Log4Brains. It's actually pretty easy to get up and running with this tool. Right, next one is
worth mentioning, Daniel, with that the ADRs is just markdown files in your repository. You don't have to ship your Log4Brains or something like that with the repo. So you can run it locally, or you can run it on the GitHub repo or GitHub pages, but you don't have to ship it with a template. So it's just Markdown files.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, William. So next one that we've got is our .NET CLI query templates. So we've added a couple more templates, item templates into the solution template itself. So these come just when you install the main template. And what these allow you to do is to generate all of the classes and all the boilerplate code that you would normally need to create when you're creating a query. So this one, for example, it's going to create a folder here. It's going to create our AutoMapper profile, the query itself, and any DTOs that we're going to return from that query as well. So the template here, it's basically .NET new SSW-CA-query. We pass in the name, the entity name. So in this case, it was product. And we just need to pass in the namespace root as well, so everything compiles nicely. And likewise, we've also got the same thing for our commands, very similar command line here, but it's going to create the validator for the command and the command here, which is our mediator handler. So we've also released version 0.4.0 of our clean architecture template. Is a little snippet of all the work that's gone into this version of our template. If you want to find out more, you can hit this URL for all the details. So next, we've got the work that was done around personas. So Chris, might hand over to you, mate, and just get us to walk us through this one.
Sure. So as we mentioned earlier, we tried to get the thing called architecture, basically where we want to define a persona and categorize a project based on the persona. So this persona is based on complexity of the project, and based on this persona, then we can select the recommended architecture for that project. And this is like the first iteration of this. So we'll see how that goes. So as you can see, we have a table now in the screen. We have three main types of persona. The first one is called low, which is low complexity, and then you have medium complexity, and then you have the third one, which is high complexity. Now, this is a simplified matrix table that sort of, you can, at a glance, you can tell, if your project has a strong technical requirements, then it might be a medium or high persona. So more details on this later. We have a separate information table, but I'm just gonna go through a summary of what's going on here. So if we go to the next slide, then this is the roughly the decision tree on how you can select how you can categorize if a project is a high complexity, medium, or low complexity. So there's the diagram there. For example, if you have a multi-developer team, then it's immediately going to be a high complexity, because then you have multiple developers working on a project. Multiple developers team working on a project. So now when you have multiple teams working together, it adds a huge lot of complexity. So obviously your architecture have to accommodate for this kind of collaboration. You can read the rest of the decision branch there in the screen. So I'm just going to move on for the next slide. So once we decide what kind of persona this project belongs to, now this is a couple of architecture options that we recommended. For low complexity, we recommend you start with the vertical slice architecture with minimal endpoints. So then you are not bogged down with the many layerings that people often complain about. This is too much layers happening. I don't need this much layer. So now if your project is low complexity, then you don't need those kind of layers perhaps now. So we recommend that you can start with the VSA architecture with minimal endpoints. There's also another option using fast endpoints that we've discussed a couple of while ago. This is also an option that you can do. Now, for medium one, we recommend to use the clean architecture with simplified version. So simplified means that you combine a couple of layers, such as infrastructure, to the application layer. So then you don't have that many layers, but you sort of like set up your project in a layered approach, so you're ready to migrate to a high complexity. Or if you want to have the benefit of the, what's the term for it again, the dependency direction, you get the full benefits of the layering there. That's the summary of the architecture option that we have. Now on the next slide, I also have another one, which is the upgrade path. So we also think about how, if a project should grow beyond its scope and then you want to grow this to like a higher complexity, then it's also possible. For low minimal endpoints, you can just go, there's an upgrade path to full simplified clean architecture. But if you start from low fast endpoints, then you're probably gonna do a bit of refactor. And then from medium, you can go directly to full clean architecture, because it was it's like a reduced version of clean architecture. So you would need a minor refactor, but it's not like a huge refactor. You don't have to rewrite the whole code, everything. That's the summarized version of it. We do have like another information outside this this presentation on how to identify which part you need to refactor, but we'll talk about that later.
That's great, Chris. Thanks for that, mate. That's some really good work. And lastly, I just wanted to point out, we've been talking a lot about our clean architecture template and the work that's going on into it. So if you want to see that, if you want to start having a look at the code, download the template, install it, start using it, you can find it on our GitHub repo at SSW Consulting, ssw.cleanarchitecture. So we'd love to hear your feedback on that if you have any. That's everything today for our community update. Thanks very much for joining us, everyone, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.